Well, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you may be. I'm Paul Finch from World Architecture Festival, and it'll be my pleasure to guide us through this hour or so webinar about the Architecture Drawing Prize 2022. It's curated by MAKE, Sir John Soanes Museum, World Architecture Festival, and this year, for the first time, we're in partnership with the Iris Ceramica Group. 1,500 employees in more than 100 offices around the world, and their business is high-end ceramic surfaces. They're not a tile company. So many thanks to them, and thanks also to our media partner, ArchDaily, who are live streaming this event. The judges this year, artists, Ben Langlands, Nikki Bell, and Pablo Bronstein, who's here with us in the studio this evening. Narinder Sagu, who's a senior partner at Foster & Partners and responsible for all their visualizations and representations. Lily Jenks, landscape architect and teacher. Bruce Boucher, director of the Soane Museum. Federico Minozzi, who's the CEO of the Iris Ceramica Group. Ken Shuttleworth, founder of these awards and also the founder of MAKE Architects, and myself as chair. And the first thing I'm going to do is just ask you, Ken, just to say a couple of words about your idea in founding this award, now in its 6th year.
Thanks, Paul. Yes, I mean, we established back in 2017 by MAKE, and it's a collaboration between MAKE and WAF and St John Soanes Museum. So it's something that's very unique in the world. I mean, drawing to me has always, helped me communicate from a very young age, and it became sort of integral part of my life when I was growing up, and since all the way through my life. And I think I just think as I draw, I just think and draw at the same time. I plan, I create, develop ideas, only really through drawing. And I think the hand for me is really important in terms of getting those messages across. And something I became known for at university, I became known as Ken the Pen, which has always been my nickname. And although the building process has changed a great deal since then, drawing continues to be something precious, I think, the design process and also in the communication of ideas. That's why back in 2016, MAKE started to explore what we could do to promote and celebrate the importance of drawing in all its forms, from hand drawing to digital and hybrid, as a tool for capturing and communicating architectural ideas. So that's how it started, Paul, and I think it's basically gone from strength to strength. Back to you.
Thank you very much indeed. And I should also say, in addition to Ken and Pablo, we have Erin McKellar with us in, as it were, the virtual studio. And she's going to be talking a bit later about curating the exhibition of the best of the drawings from this year's prize. So let's have a look at some drawings, and let's move to our first category, which is digital. Let's see the first of the exhibited images. There are the three that are being exhibited at the Soane this year. Exhibition opening to the public this Wednesday. So let's look at them one by one. The first one, this is from Mai-Chen Duan from the University of Melbourne. The project title is Mnemosyne, created and composed using Rhino and Photoshop. And this proposition is about a democratic art institute led and facilitated by 3 distinct academies: painting, textile, and digital art. It aims to produce, gather, and disseminate mementos from a diverse range of individuals whose private memories eventually become public knowledge. And the next. This is by Eric Pham, University of Texas at Arlington. The project title, The Minecraft Labyrinth, a reclamation of childhood, but probably not quite the same as any child has managed to put together. This piece was made entirely with the video game Minecraft, a game made of voxel blocks to build words with, a game that defined an entire generation of children, and a game which Eric spent over a decade experimenting in. The world is a culmination of that decade, looking at games as representations of spatial conditions, extraordinary attention to detail. And next, this is the digital winner. This is by Anton Marcus Passing of Remote Controlled Studio, located, I think, still in Berlin. And the project title is The Wall. Anton writes, the absurd splendor of the eternal is the sister of finality. She is able to modify established structures, putting us in a traumatic state. The wall is the beginning and the end at the same moment, a manifested inhalation of the infinite. And I'm hoping that Anton Marcus Passing is with us and would now like to say a few words about the creation of this drawing. Anton is a previous category and indeed overall winner of the Architecture Drawing Prize when we were in Amsterdam. So I'm hoping that we can, by the miracle of digital technology, link up with him to say a few words.
Paul, can you hear me now?
Anton. Yes, we can hear you.
So some technical problems. Thank you for introduce my work. So yeah, it's my work is about maybe the simplest and the most sophisticated element we have in architecture. And maybe my work is called The Wall, but we don't know, is it really a wall, or is it totally deep object behind, or is it endless, or is it maybe the inner surface of a room? So my interest was to deal or play with this several dimensions where you don't know where you are and what influence this wall has to you. So, for example, do you know what do you think is the most important thing to find or to like a room? In my eyes, is the possibility to leave it. If you don't have the chance to leave it, you don't like the room, even if it's the most beautiful room in the world. So, and this depends on the quality of the walls. So if not one wall has an opening or a door or a key, you will hate this room. And so this is just an example for all the possibilities which I have in mind if I'm talking about the wall.
I think you have some images that you could show us that relate to this work. Just ask, we've got them, so.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, there's it's a project about liquid dreaming. I don't know if you know what it is. It's a ability of a person who could control her own dreams, and I thought this was so amazing that he could not just sit in a sofa, so he has to find, or he has to get another way to dive through space, and this is one possibility. Yeah, this is a piece of my work, The Last Journey. It's about the question, how where we go, what is our end, and what role architecture could play. And the lower title is Good Luck, Said the Frog. So maybe sometimes it's not good to talk too much about the image, because I think image has its own meta language. And if I would be a good talker, a good writer, I would have become a writer. So maybe let's. There are a lot of renderings. This is a project was called The Recess. It's about the idea of have a recess inside an endless continuum, and so to try to create the opposite of just nothing. And you could dive deep into this into a small gap and find another world. So this is what was behind in a few words. This is part of my, this is called USO, Unknown Strategic Outpost. It's a story about some people in the Netherlands who get a really strange appointment with other species. So yeah, you know, it's difficult to tell everything about an image because normally I write a small story about it. So it just I try to catch an atmosphere, and I try to yeah, deal with it. This is also a project during Corona. So it was the idea of having a freedom and peace, and just telling a story about a girl who is a vaccine hunter, and she is dealing with quite nice vaccines. And I try to give another dimension if I put it into an old painting, to think about what's happened, what is happening today, and what's happened later. So in between, it's a time which is not existing, because the image is maybe 1871, mine is from 2002. But if you look at it, maybe it's just another time which is in between. You cannot really exactly say. Yeah, this was part of a painting. It's called White Horses, and it was it's about thoughts which I have to the phenomenon of a city itself, and what kind of protagonists are creating the city, and every day with changing it and reconstruct it.
Okay, let's stay on that one. In fact, James Hyder, who's with us in the studio, perhaps we can go back to the winning image, actually. Let me say what Narinder Sagu, we asked Narinder for some comments on that. We were hoping he might join us. He's actually on a flight to New York, and he was going to try and test the Wi-Fi technology of the airline concerned. But I don't think it's kicked in yet. But I do have his thoughts on this, and he says this: I believe that this piece, The Wall, optimizes the strength of human interaction with the digital canvas and challenges the world of AI that we fear. The Wall appears to be an infinite environment of surfaces and edges, with layers of depth that invite us in to inhabit this golden architecture with the mind. We wanted to zoom in endlessly while judging, as it is almost scaleless, but so intricate at the same time. I think that The Wall is a masterful assembly, produced digitally, but crafted by the human mind. And I think this was quite unlike the drawing that won the prize when we were in Amsterdam. This was more about surface than depth. And in a sense, it was more about kind of the appearance of possibilities rather than the depth of stories, if I could put it like that. So much admired. And I wonder if either of the other two judges wanted to make any comment on this image. Ken or Pablo?
I think what wasn't mentioned was the color. I mean, the color is just makes you want to sort of dive into it. I think it's just extraordinary depth of, as Narinder said, this the sort of depths you're getting. The colors are absolutely fantastic, and I think it's just a remarkable drawing.
Thank you very much. Pablo?
Yeah, there's that glorious bit of sunlight reflected, if it is sunlight and if it is a reflection, round about the center of the work, which creates it creates a kind of a sense of movement or of fleetingness, which is quite rare in a very sort of flat grid-like image, actually.
Thank you very much. And I think that we might come back briefly later on to this relationship between artificial intelligence and human creativity. For the moment anyway, Anton Markus Passing, thank you very much and congratulations.
Thank you so much. And please excuse my bad English. Sometimes I'm missing words, so it's a hard job to transmit what I really think. So
it was excellent, and also it was just as good as it was in the bar at the one hotel in Amsterdam. Okay, we're going to move on to the hand-drawn category now, and we can remind ourselves about the three images which are going to be exhibited at the sorry, I say three, it's four. One is a triptych, and again, let's just run through these and say who's won what. Well, this entrant is Georgios Christofi from the Bartlett School of Architecture, University College London. It's the Temple of Gaia, and it's a triptych depicting the Temple of Gaia, goddess of earth, in its most prominent states throughout its lifespan: building construction, the praise of nature, and the iconographic state of ruin. Technical drawing pens and watercolor paper were used to create the drawing. And next, this is by Ben Johnson. I think the second entry that Ben has submitted for these awards. His previous one also exhibited at the Soane. This is the final Mexico drawing. The subject is Mexico Airport, and this drawing was inspired by a Foster and Partners concept drawing, working drawings and renders. And what he's done, he says, through a long process of refining a viewpoint and elimination of unnecessary details, I sought to present an image that is timeless and floats between earth and sky, all leading to a still point. Contemplation through drawing and its ink on paper. The third hand-drawn entry to be exhibited, and I should say that hand-drawn were the majority of drawings submitted this year. So there's no shortage of architects and students who really want to keep exploring work by hand. This is by Dustin Wheat from the University of Texas, Arlington. It's homage to Corb, and he describes it as Texas meets Femini. And the vision of this drawing came to me, he writes, while Charles Edouard and I were exploring mushrooms. The following morning, the new me sketched out the composition and rendered it over the following week. And it's drawn with graphite and ink. Bit of a tour de force there. But our winner in the hand-drawn category is this drawing, The Spirit of Mountain. This is by Wai-Cheng Ye, South China University of Technology. And he writes that the painting uses modern architecture to translate Fan Quan's journey through mountains and streams in the Song dynasty. It is drawn, he says, by simple pencils and conveys a joyful spirit of landscape. Inheriting the ancient literates' concept of nature, I try to further reshape the relationship between man-made and nature by reconstructing the relationship between mountains, waters, buildings, and plant. And I'm hoping that we can link up with Wai-Cheng Ye, who has some images to show in connection with this drawing, and I think also possibly an animation. Wai-Cheng Ye, welcome.
Hello, everyone. Can I be heard?
Yes.
Let me share my screen. Oh. Can you see that?
Yes, we can. That's all good.
Okay, so hello everyone, I'm Wei Cheng. Now I'm going to share the inspiration of creating the Spirit of Mountain. The original idea was based on the reality of the separation of cities and nature. The Spirit of Mountain provides a possible vision for a future city, which I think would be intertwined with nature. So how do I imagine? One of the inspirations is spatial sequence, and I found it interesting in Chinese classical gardens. Showing above is a famous painting depicting the Chinese garden. You can see series of scenes unfolded from right to left, full of story and interesting details. It's a bit like a continuous cartoon put together, or spatial sequence is a kind of spatial rhythm feeling similar to music. My work is actually translated from this famous painting, which is created in the Northern Song Dynasty. The reason why I chose this painting is that the landscape depicted in this drawing is very powerful to me. And the picture is full of interesting details, and it gives me a sense of decoration. I translate this work from 4 aspects. There are composition, space, texture, and narrative. Firstly, it is composed of an up and down composition, and it follows with an S-shaped axis. And water acts as a hidden axis, divide the space in an interesting way. Secondly, there are so many layers of space from the close view to a distant view, and we can feel the depth of space. And next is texture. The texture is made by special painting techniques, and it gives people a sense of decoration while it just vividly depicting those objects. Lastly is difficult to explain narrative, because I think everything in this drawing contribute to it, but some details in the painting obviously making it dramatic. We can see characters at the foot of the mountain and temples in the forest. And for me, the waterfall that falling from top of the mountain is captivating. So translation in my works is like this. Most directly, I translate stones into architectural blocks, and the drawing was adapted with an axonometric angle. I extended the axis to show more spatial sequences. At the same time, I enrich the forms of the water, which you can see quite clearly from the front view, and I intertwine and I made it intertwine with nature and architecture. So water connects other elements as it still acts as a hidden axis. In order to increase the depth of space, a corner of the picture is left with a distant view. Additionally, I added platforms or viewing decks to indicate the sides and viewing points in order to increase narrative. So this is the overall structure of my work. And here are the drawing techniques and spatial strategies. So briefly, adapted with axonometric angle, this work represents the texture just like the original one. You can feel the invisible lines perpendicular to each other. And for spatial strategies, I arrange all the buildings in the proper positions, firstly and subjectively, and secondly, holes or windows are made out of the blocks, and finally, nature elements like trees or rocks are added to the space between blocks. Eventually, nature is like infiltrating into the building. I guess this is called framing or 借景 in Chinese, which is one of the ways to create space in traditional Chinese gardens. So this work is actually a small training for space or space forming in one of my professional courses. And the combination of a real city and nature is certainly much more complicated than the combination of just form. But I think this work at least provides with an imagination for the future city. So that's all I'm about to share. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And of course, as is often the case with judging competitions, it would have been so lovely to have had that presentation as well as the drawing. So it's been a pleasure to see the kind of complexity of thought that's gone into that drawing. Ken Shuttleworth, over to you for a comment.
I mean, unlike you, I'd love to have seen that earlier. Fantastic explanation. I think it's a very inspirational drawing. I mean, to draw like that with pencil and to create that sort of atmosphere, which explores the relationship between sort of man-made and nature, I just find extraordinary. I seem to remember Paul, you saying during the jury process that it struck me that the delicacy of that drawing is incredible. It's highlighting the difference between the sort of tall building aesthetic and sort of nature. And I sort of agree, that it's absolutely incredible. And the sort of way, disrupting in a sort of creative way, the insertion of nature and sort of artistic intervention, I think it's just incredible. And just see that background to it, I mean, it just makes a very worthy winner, I think.
Yeah, I think there was a point we made in conversation, which is that lots of people are, as it were, inserting nature into their buildings, whether it's on balconies or rooftop gardens and so on and so forth. And in a way, what was interesting and kind of stimulating about this drawing is that nature isn't invading everything, that there's a sort of balancing act going on between, from 100% nature to 100% building, and then things in between, rather than a sort of sprouting plants everywhere. Pablo, what did you think of this?
Well, when Chinese classical painting first made it to the West, Europe was quite confused by it, because in particular, the gaps, the white areas, the voids between rocks and mountains and whatever, and they were read as just simply bits that were missing, and they didn't really understand what was there. And of course, what's there is mist, it's sunlight on the river, it's all sorts of atmospheric constructions that you have to essentially read into the image. And the idea of replacing some of those atmospheric tricks, those voids, with the idea of a wall of cast concrete is it's quite a witty thing to do, quite transgressive in a way. And aside from that, I just find it extraordinarily beautiful.
Thank you very much indeed. And Wei Chengye, congratulations on winning the hand-drawn category. And thank you very much for such an engaging presentation of how you came to produce this work. Thank you very much indeed. We're going to move on to the hybrid category now. Let's have a look at the hybrid exemplars, which are going to be exhibited at the Soane. There are 3, so let's look at them in turn. The first is Traversing Dreamscapes by Sean Sear, and it's described as an autobiographical investigation into the entanglement of dreams and reality, explored in 5 chapters, so quite a considerable piece of work, of which this is one part. Next, this is by William Du Toit, Victoria University of Wellington. Intriguing project called The Stamper Battery, and the inspiration comes from E.M. Forster's 1909 short story, The Machine Stops. And William writes, this allegorical architectural drawing represents a seminal tale of environmental devastation caused by the 1860 New Zealand gold rush. It combines orthographic notation and layering to preserve an important heritage story of place identity as a lesson for future generations to learn from past mistakes. So literature, environmentalism, and drawing. And the hybrid winner for 2022 is by Samuel Wen and Michael Wren, the University of Melbourne. The project title is the Fitzroy Food Institute. And this project is about a dumpling institute that deviates from a traditional Orientalist attitude towards Chinese culture, whilst also examining ideas of globalization and automation. It's a composite drawing, plan, section, elevations, views, diagrams, detail, and what they call call-outs, arranged in a top-down view of a typically Chinese roundtable dining experience, which I suppose we're pretty much familiar with across the world, particularly here in London. Now we're hoping that both Samuel and Michael can join us. I think Michael is already in London. Samuel might be calling in from an airport, but let's ask them to say something and show some images related to their winning entry.
Thank you, Paul. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Sweet. So first of all, we feel really honored and grateful that our work has received such recognition. This project means a lot to us because the broader intention of the drawing was to use architecture to challenge traditional Oriental stereotypes about our Chinese culture. The drawing is composed in a way that it kind of unfolds from the ground floor plan, and it's designed for people to look at it from the top down and around. So we kind of intended for this drawing to be laid on a table so that it challenges the sort of traditional hierarchy associated with people viewing a traditional drawing from elevation. And so the drawing is composed in a way that the supplementary sort of information distributes itself in rings. So surrounding the plan is the 2 elevations and the sections. And then there's another ring of hierarchy that becomes the views and the diagrams. And I guess I wanted to touch a little bit on what collaboration meant in a remote academic setting when this was done. So however, we were able to kind of work through the project by identifying our individual strengths and weaknesses. So for example, Sam has always been passionate about hand-drawn illustrations, whereas I've always had a sort of an aptitude to digital rendering. And incorporating both methods of representation sort of acknowledges a post-digital era in architectural visualization, where people have sort of exhausted one discipline from another. And I guess I'm going to pass it off to Sam to touch on a little bit about the drawing and some of the supplementary stuff.
Hi all, can you hear me all right?
We can, Samuel, yes, welcome.
Okay, so it is. So I'm just checking in from San Francisco Airport at the moment. during a layover before my flight to London. So I'll just quickly talk through sort of the slides that we prepared for, I guess, explaining the sort of process of our drawing. So next slide. So this project was done out of a master studio across a semester, so half a year. And so the semester itself was split up into sort of two parts. So the first part was sort of largely individual work, but our tasks were that every week we were given a sort of a point in the food system and food infrastructure to examine sort of things, sort of ideas such as consumption, context, preparation, distribution, and waste as examples. So these images that you see on screen at the moment were a few of those sort of esquisses that were done every single week to explore these sort of ideas and what they meant to us. And so our final drawing took largely from these sort of ideas that we explored early on, influencing, I guess, the sort of final project. So next slide. So in terms of the layout of the drawing, we sort of, from the get-go, we had the idea of that sort of top-down dining setting already in our head. It was just a matter of how I guess we sort of laid it out. And so from the beginning, we had that sort of idea of it, the plan being in the center, and then we have the peripheral sort of drawings around it. And so working through this took around, I guess, while also designing the sort of the building and the project, maybe a process of 3 weeks or so, back and forth with our tutors as well, going through sort of iterations. And so you can see this sort of process and sort of some of our ideas of how we got to that final process, the final drawing and the layout itself. So to the final slide. So the drawing itself, sort of like Mike said, it was a combination of sort of hand-drawn elements as well as visual processes. The main softwares that we did end up using were Rhino, Photoshop, and Illustrator, with a lot of the hand-drawn things done, scanned in, as well as drawn digitally on tablet. So that bottom left drawing is all of the shadows. So everything was sort of modeled, all the elements were modeled at Rhino, and then the views were taken and put together in Photoshop, touched up, edited, with the line work then also taken from Rhino and laid over on top of it. And so on the right, you can see 4 of the sort of different view setups that, or the different elements of the peripheral drawings that we sort of ended up combining together. So most of the hand-drawn elements were the entourage, which because of the scale of the drawing, it's quite hard to see because the entourage is quite small. But yeah, a lot of it was just sort of building up sort of hand-drawn elements across the semester and then putting it in all at the end. But yeah, that was sort of the process of how we went through and created this piece.
Well, Sam and Mike, thank you very much indeed for that. And again, it's just lovely to hear the descriptions about the work that went into this and how it happened, which the judges, of course, could only speculate about. But quite clearly, that it's a very powerful combination of 2 different but related techniques. Pablo Bronstein, give us some thoughts on this.
Well, I think we assumed while we were judging that the plan was essentially being discussed around a table, and that the figures around the table were probably sort of in the process of designing and talking and making work whilst they're eating, which is, I mean, the presence of the hands and the food, and this trompe l'oeil is one of the reasons why we were really drawn to it, and that in itself has a really sort of venerable tradition. The architect occasionally puts a bit of their body or their friend's body into a drawing from another angle. There is a very good drawing by Lecoeur, the late 18th century French architect. He puts his hand in occasionally. He also depicts himself occasionally dressed as a nun. There's a very good few drawings by Piranesi and prints by Piranesi of objects sitting on his plans. There's also a rather cheeky Piranesi drawing of his excrement sitting on top of someone's work that he doesn't like. And this is again a play of trompe l'oeil. And there is the famous Ledoux painting, drawing or print of the eye of the architect or God of the architect, because looking and being reflected in this semicircular space, because in a way what we're looking at when we're looking down at this is a play of scale and a play of power, big things touching small things, big things crushing small things, big things moving small things. And in a way, it's a sort of critique of architecture. It is a few people taking decisions about a lot of people, or vice versa, which I find clever and challenging. I like the idea of a chopstick falling down and killing someone, or you know, some food about the size of an underground train, or whatever it might be. So all of these things make what would be a series of architectural views and plans into a social critique, which is why for me it's powerful and fun.
And rather joyful, Ken Shuttleworth.
Yes, I mean, I think it's remarkable sort of drawing in a way, because it feels like you're looking down on a game, something. It's almost like, you know, those shots in films where you look down on the cards and people have got their cards on the table in their hands and sort of cigarettes, and it reminds me more like that. But I think it's a very beautiful drawing. I just wanted to say, I forgot to mention, these are the sort of trophies that we've done, which everybody will get who's the winner. This is sorry, it's upside down. This one's Samuel's trophy, and there's a certificate as well for the winners, which will be given out at the Soane tomorrow night.
Excellent, and we'll look forward to that. Well, talking about the Soane, we're now going to move on to the venue for the exhibition. Erin McKellar has worked on previous exhibitions of the Drawing Prize, but this year she is the curator. And Erin, it would be lovely to hear from you just a bit about what it's like curating a show of architectural drawings in one of the most extraordinary venues, redolent of architecture and drawing in London.
Well, it's fun, of course. As Soane always intended, the museum is really an academy of architecture. And so for me, one of the great sort of honors of working there is to be able to get to know the architects of today, get to see what architects are doing with drawing, and get to display them. And I think this year we've been really lucky to have a group of drawings which are in general really large and really immersive, and I think they really sort of make the space come alive. We've had some great early feedback that suggests that the cases have never looked better than with these drawings in them. Whether that's true or not, we'll see. But I think we've been really lucky this year. So visitors to the museum, to this exhibition, will see what is the largest architecture drawing prize exhibition that we've hosted so far. In addition to the 10 shortlisted works, which are presented on their own terms, we've also got a display, a companion piece that celebrates the practice of drawing in Soane's time and how Soane and his pupils would have drawn in the museum. And this is to coincide with the reopening of Soane's drawing office later this year. And what will be included in that show, in that part of the show, is drawing implements from Soane's time. So objects that Soane and his pupils would have actually used, and examples of the drawings that they produced at the Soane Museum, which itself was, of course, an architectural practice. And then finally, the other aspect of the exhibition that visitors will see will be the 5-year retrospective. Make have produced a wonderful film, which is being shown in the foil space, which is a fly-through of the 5-year retrospective exhibition, which is shown online at the Vault of Contemporary Art. So I think we've got lots of material this year, which is a real privilege. And I think one of the things that will stand out to visitors is, of course, we've not broken the exhibition up into themes, but I think that visitors will notice some themes emerging from the drawings. One of those, of course, nature, which we sort of touched upon this evening already. And the other, I think, is sort of memory and biography and storytelling. I think more than any other year, we've seen drawings that have a real desire to tell a story through their media. And so I think this year is going to be, again, a really exciting display. So thanks, and we hope you come. And if not, there's some content online. We'll be sort of releasing in dribs and drabs interviews and other aspects of making drawings.
Erin, thank you very much. And I think we can have a little sneak preview of some other aspects of the exhibition that you were talking about. So here we see the digital and the hybrid categories exhibited at some scale in these extraordinary showcases. And the next one. And here's the hand-drawn winner, shown to great advantage. And the next one. And here are some of the things that, Erin, you were talking about, the drawing methods and implements of Soane's own time. I mean, do you think when you look at this that actually the sort of leap across the generations and across the centuries between people working with different implements, but is the spirit the same? Or do you think that now it's such an utterly changed world because of, you know, digital intelligence, if you like?
Well, I think that some of the objects will be very familiar to visitors. I think some of them, you know, the compass, the protractor, these are things that people still use today. They're relatively unchanged. And as for the practice of drawing itself, I think that the thing that we sort of benefit from now is that not every architectural drawing needs to be sort of an object of work. We can be producing architectural drawings, which are sort of works of art in and of themselves.
Thank you very much. Well, we're going to announce who the overall winner of this year's Architecture Drawing Prize is. But just before that, a word from Bruce Boucher, great supporter of these awards, director of the Soane Museum, and one of our judges this year. So let's just see this very short film.
My name is Bruce Boucher. I'm director of Sir John Soane's Museum, and we're delighted to continue our partnership with Make Architects and the World Architecture Festival in this, the 6th year of the Architecture Drawing Prize. Sir John Soane's Museum not only houses his collection in 3 starred Grade 1 Georgian listed buildings, which form a great environment for the works themselves and is a miniature architecture masterpiece. But it was also Soane's place of work, where his apprentices would produce drawings in the drawing office, which is soon to open and is the last part of the building to be reconstructed. So it's appropriate with this rich history that we can host again the annual exhibition of the best in contemporary architectural drawing from around the world. My name is Bruce Boucher. I'm director.
Thanks very much to Bruce for those few words. If you've never visited the Soane Museum, the next time you're in London, be sure to do so. It's a remarkable place and a kind of wonderful combination of architecture and life and history and drawing. Well, I'd now like to announce the overall winner of the 2022/23 Architecture Drawing Prize. This is drawn, of course, from the category winners, and the prize goes to Samuel Wen and Michael Wren for the Fitzroy Food Institute, which, as you saw just now, also won the hybrid category. So many congratulations to them. And Ken, it's always a bit invidious, isn't it, picking overall winners, because the other category winners had an awful lot to commend them. But I think that we felt about this particular project that it had a kind of richness and complexity, which Pablo was talking about, and hence that decision.
Yeah, I mean, I think all three are fantastic, and it's just so wonderful for me to see that the spirit of drawing and architecture is still going on. And I think what's interesting is that the amount of hand drawing, even this hybrid, has a lot of hand drawing in it. And I think that's so reassuring in an era of computers, to actually have people who are actually still drawing by hand, working with people who use computers as well. So for me, I think it's a very worthy winner, and I can't wait to see it in reality, which is we haven't seen it. We just see little images of it. So to see it tomorrow night in reality will be fantastic, and all the others as well. Thank you.
Pablo, you were very interesting and complimentary about this. I wonder if you have any sort of overall thoughts about the sort of drawings that we saw this year. You've done this a couple of times. Erin mentioned that slightly unusually that some strong themes seem to emerge in respect of the exhibited projects, to do with nature and narratives and stories and memories. Were you conscious of that on the day? I think I was definitely about nature and memory, I think, possibly because we're still in a sort of post-pandemic condition when a lot of this work was undertaken.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that what's interesting about all three winners and so much of the other work that has made it to the exhibition, and the work that was presented that didn't make it, was just how genre bending it is, how many different sorts of strategies are employed, even within an individual, very tightly controlled category. I think the reason for me why the overall winner won is because the genre bending becomes theatre and soap opera, and it flies away, really.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to just read out something that Narinder wrote, which about the overall experience of judging this year, which I think is very relevant to your remarks and Ken's. And he says, with the emergence of artificial intelligence encroaching on the territories of artists and architects, 2022 might be seen as the year of the beginning of the unknown canvas, the artist anonymous, where a distinction between analog, digital, and hybrid has been useful to distinguish technique. The intent of storytelling has always been a constant. We are seeing a blend of all of the above, which blurs the edges. The emergence of AI-generated artwork can create all of these creative dimensions and more. The analog and digital are one with the creative languages and minds which generate them. Next year, we might see more hand drawings that are created digitally and digital drawings created by hand. Where's the distinction? The future is as exciting as ever, and we must embrace change. However, the constant will always be our celebration of drawing as a language to recall, communicate, and explore the future, whatever the medium. In architecture, the form of communication must be set within the context of the entire discourse. This year, the Architecture Drawing Prize saw an outstanding range of work, and the quality was as high as ever, each category exploring an architectural language through the various lenses of drawing. I think that's a very nice note to end on, actually. So I'd like to thank the studio guests, Pablo Bronstein, Ken Shuttleworth, and Erin McKellar. I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Iris Ceramica Group, for all their support, including providing one of the judges, Federica Minozzi. I'd like to thank the Sohn, of course, for hosting what I think will be a wonderful exhibition opening on Wednesday. It's on for 3 months, which is the longest show I think that, that they've done so far. Finally, thanks to Ken Shuttleworth and Make Architects really for creating this award in the first place. Congratulations. And from what has been a crisp, sunny London February day, good evening, but wherever you are, goodbye.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All okay?